And welcome, boys and girls, to another episode of Stuck. I am your host, Bach. Joining me this week on broadcast, though, someone that we haven't seen on the show yet, Mr. DarfMike. Michael Winnick. How's it going, bud?
It's going all right. How are you today, Mark?
I am about as good as I can be, given all the circumstances surrounding the world we currently live in. But, yeah, we normally have Mr. Magic Helmet on the show, Mitch, but Mitch was unavailable today, so we had to go with DarfMike.
Mitch getting some much needed leave, little break from the show. I'm happy to fill in for Magic Helmet. It's a big helmet to fill, but I feel like I might be able to do it for just a little while.
I see what you did there. Clever. Now, today's show is about something that actually might apply here. You said Mitch deserves a break. Why do you think Mitch deserves a break, a little respite?
You know, he works hard. Everybody needs a break every once in a while. Help them feel their best, help them get their best. And, you know, it's good to have a mental reset. And this, as you've told me, plays into our topic nicely.
Yeah, so last week on the show, Mitch and I spoke about Astralis and the 7-man roster. Obviously, that was a pretty interesting piece of news in the Counter-Strike world. It didn't really make too much sense to a lot of people, myself included. Now we're starting to see maybe why that change was made, why that change came into place. It's because Gla1ve's decided he needs a break. The constant wear and tear of esports has broken him down. Physically and mentally, he needs to step away for a bit, which is interesting because you look at that team, you're like, oh, you've got the best team in the world. Everything's working. Yeah, sure, you aren't as good as you once were. You know, teams are starting to match your level of output and performance, especially with the switch to online now, thanks to COVID. But at the same point in time, they're still largely considered the best in the world. And you can see that even the best in the world need a break. Why is that? It's just video games, Mike.
It is, but it's about the kind of insanity and time commitment it takes to actually compete at that level, right? I think that especially for Gla1ve, an IGL for his team, a player upon whom a lot depends within the server, it makes a lot of sense. And you have these month-long breaks, these player breaks that happen typically in August and December-ish that give some sort of a break, but you don't have a true full off-season like you do in more professional sports, for example. Obviously, in professional sports, you've got the physical wear and tear, which is a big factor in there being only half a season or 3/4 of a year played, or that kind of thing. But the mental strain is something that's discounted, I think. It takes such an insane amount of dedication as an IGL in particular, to not only maintain your personal form in terms of DMing and making sure that you're on point, maintaining your team form, putting in the time, watching demos, preparing for opponents, getting the scrim time in, leading the squad, spending the time without the squad there to figure out how you want to shape the squad for the next game. It's just an enormous amount of manpower hours. And if you sustain that for years at a time, as these players have been doing, as a player like Gla1ve has been doing since when he came into the roster, 2017?
That's the crazy thing, right? I looked back to see when he first joined the roster. October 24th, 2016.
Wow.
So almost 4 straight years with the same team on and like in the active rotation, not like, oh, he got benched. Yeah, he had that brief period where he took a little of a bit of a hiatus due to, I think it was health reasons. But at the same point in time, like, that's a long time to play with one roster. And long time to play with one roster that's at the top of their scene. When you consider that in the tail end of that year since joining Astralis, they played 4 events. It was ECS Series 2 Finals, E-League Season 2 Finals, ECS Season 2, which was online, and then IEM Oakland. But then you look at their next year, and it's like 2017, it's almost all offline. E-League Major, DreamHack Masters Las Vegas, IEM Masters 11, Star Ladder Series Season 3, IEM Sydney. They played in Pro League and ECS, which were the 2 online events that they tried to squeeze in amongst all of that stuff. They did the E-League Clash for Cash, ECS Season 3 Finals, PGL Major, DreamHack Masters Malmö, ESL 1 New York, E-League CSGO Premier, Epicenter, ESL Pro League Season 6 offline event. Or no, that's online, excuse me. IEM Oakland. There was 2 online seasons amidst all this, and then they did Blast Pro Series Copenhagen, ESL finals, ECS finals. Then you look at the next year, and it's even crazier. It's like E-League Major in Boston, Star Ladder, IEM, the World Champs, IEM Sydney, I believe, DreamHack Masters Marseille, ESL Pro League Season 7 finals, ECS Season 5 finals, ESL 1 Cologne, E-League CSGO Premier, DreamHack Masters Stockholm, the Face It Major, Blast Pro Series Istanbul, Blast Pro Series Copenhagen, IEM Chicago, ESL Pro League Season 8 finals, ECS Season 6 finals. Like, all of that, to me, is just, like, crazy, and they capped it off with Blast Pro Series Lisbon. But when you just look at, like, the number of events they're playing offline per year, it's a constant state of travel. And in some of these cases, it's back to back to back to back. Let's see, ECS Seasons 5 finals was, it was Cologne was July 7th. E-League Premier was July 29th. Obviously, there's like a big jump between those two. Those are like the longer breaks that they got. So the reason I keep bringing up all these numbers and all of these events, that would wear on anybody.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that is not spoken about enough, is being responsible with your physical and mental health in this industry. Everyone just makes the same assumption. It's just video games. How hard could it be? You have a dream job. You get to do what you love. You get paid way too much money. I mean, some of those things may be true. It is a dream job to get to play professional game. It's something that a lot of people would love, but they don't understand how hard it is to actually do that consistently for years in a row.
Yeah.
You like look at talent even. Talent are taxed almost even harder, not to say that, we somehow are special, but like top tier talent, they don't skip the events sometimes. So like Astralis might only play the tier 1 events, but some of the higher level talent will be working those tier 2 events as well. It's a lot.
It's a grind. It definitely is. And there's also, even when you're thinking about the calendar and you're packing all those events in, one thing that most people probably don't realize if they haven't actually done an event or traveled to an event, that kind of thing, is you can't just account for the event days, right? If an event is 3 days long, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, well, there's a media day on Thursday. You traveled on the Wednesday, if not on the Tuesday, to allow for a little bit of buffer time. Then you're traveling back on that Monday or Tuesday, potentially just going straight to your next event, potentially going home when you'll maybe have a day and a half, 2 days at home maximum. Is that even worth it? If you're going between 2 EU events and you're going to Denmark, maybe it's a quick flight. That's fine. But if you're going from an event in North America to an event in Europe, well, you need to allow time for jet lag. So even if you get some time at home, you're probably wrecked for that whole period of time. It's just recovery. And then you're immediately hopping on a flight and going off again. It's just it's a constant grind at that level, and it's not surprising that it gets overwhelming. I mean, you were rattling off that list at a certain point. They all just start running together because it's just an impossible number in a short period of time. And when you're a top team like Astralis, you're invited to every event, so you've got the option of picking whatever you want. But the flip side is everybody also wants you at events, so they're trying to lock you down into obligations to appear there. And suddenly it's choosing between the events you want to go to and the events that you're obliged to go to because of this connection or that connection. Obviously, the example with Astralis was the Blast events, preventing them from going to others and filling up their calendar in a big way. But
yeah,
it's a constant run.
Yeah, I look at 2019 and I think I counted up the events. Let me see here. I'm going to count them again. I think there was 19 offline events. 1, 2, 3. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. 19 offline events, not factoring in the 2 seasons of Pro League as well that also switched to offline. Remember, because Pro League last year decided they were going to run everything offline. So that's an additional thing. And that's just S tier events, highest level of caliber for all of Counter-Strike. When you start looking at the A tier events, good God, it gets insane. You look at like all of the DreamHack Opens and all of these other strangely scattered in events, Games Clash Masters, Arctic Invitational, some of the Blast Pro Series events are also in this list. So I look at those and I'm counting at least 30 A tier events. So between A and S tier, you have potentially 50 events per year in a 365-day calendar year. And each of those events, at best, are 3 days long. Most of them are a week now. So if you're looking at that, you have 50 events times 7. That's 350, and there's 365 days in a year. So obviously they can't play at all of these. It's not even physically possible anymore. It's not a matter of wanting to or not wanting to. You're picking which events you can compete in and prioritizing, even if you really like working on an event with certain tournament organizers. It just doesn't work. Now, obviously, this year is changing. We're seeing more cohabitation of esports partners. So like looking at DreamHack and ESL, for instance, things are sort of starting to mesh, or at least they were pre-COVID. They were talking about the DreamHack Pro Tour. And, as someone who worked the last desk for DreamHack at DreamHack Anaheim, we were pushing that narrative pretty regularly, talking about the ESL Pro Tour and how DreamHack and ESL events were going to kind of come together to produce a circuit. Well, obviously, that's now up in smoke because we don't really know what's going on with the event world, given everything that's going on around us. But even if we were to just isolate that and say like, oh, look, ESL and DreamHack playing nice, it's going to make things a lot easier. Even if you just played in their events and that circuit, that's still a lot. So I think the point of everything is, even if you have a dream job and you love what you do, you're going to need to build out a work-life balance. Work-life balance is incredibly important, and unfortunately, in our industry, it almost doesn't exist for a lot of people.
It certainly doesn't. It's tough, and you're seeing. Obviously, I'm a little more privy to the talent side of things, just because the people I run into. I'm personally nowhere close to that level of workload. Don't want to get ahead of myself there, but people I run into talking about the issues. There was supposed to be a priority this year on making it a little bit more feasible to talent to be closer to home. One of the things that happened with sort of exclusivity deals towards leagues, the existence of Flashpoint versus ESL, the change up there was that you saw a little bit of a regional division. Talent who are based in North America, talent like Moses, like Semler, were tended more towards the Flashpoint side of things because it meant they got to be closer to home. They got to be in one fixed location for a long period of time, which is much easier on the body. I know that was a priority there. And I think that that's the general trend we're going to see as things get a little more solidified, is a bit less of the travel, even if it's just changing the distances the talent are traveling. And I suspect it'll be similar on a player perspective, but it's still going to be tough, right? Because at the end of the day, the primary product in Counter-Strike is selling the best teams in the world competing. That's the most important thing, is getting the best teams in the world, as many as you can, in one location to figure out who's top of the top. And to do that, you need your Astralis, you need your Liquid, you need your Navi, you need players from very different regions to come together to properly be able to show it off. And the more divided the event calendar gets, the trickier that is. And then you've just got the same group of people moving from tournament to tournament. I mean, it's a tricky balance to strike of producing that content, producing the content that people crave, and providing for the fans, because ultimately they're what make this industry go. But not completely churning through everybody who actually makes the product, the players, the staff, who are not talked about very often, admins and staff along those lines, and talent as well to make the events happen.
Yeah, I think that's the other aspect of things that's not spoken about, is the people behind the scenes. You think it's hard being, one of the players or one of the talent. It is, but imagine being just the camera operator who goes from event to event to event to event to event to event, just constantly back to back to back to back to back to back to back. And everyone makes this this sort of weird claim, like, oh, you get to travel the world and see all these cool places. Players do a little bit, because players get breaks. Like players, if a team gets eliminated, they can go and experience the culture of wherever they are. Not that they do, but they can. Or if they make it through, let's say, looking at like a DreamHack Open event, if you 2-0 groups day one, you don't have to play until Sunday. You have all day Saturday to go do stuff. And we've seen teams take advantage of that. Like when we were in Anaheim, I know that some of the teams went to Disneyland. Like, that's a thing. They're going to do that. They're going to experience that. But like, we're still there. The talent, the staff is still there. And our hours are a little bit longer than some of the players, but the staff hours are longer than ours.
Yeah.
Like the production director shows up before anyone does, and leaves before anyone else does. And then when the event wraps and the players and talent all go to the after party, that staff stays at the venue and strikes the whole set and tears everything down. It's exhausting, and it definitely wears on people. And I think that the tie back to Astralis is Astralis has always been a team that's kind of innovated. We've seen like how Astralis has changed gameplay meta just by the way they utilized smokes or the way they utilized even just regular nades, like the artillery strike strategies we've seen from Astralis played out that's now become more popular. And as they've basically built their own sort of meta, other teams have adapted and adopted some of their strategies. I'm wondering if this is going to become a new thing, because everyone's been talking about this 7-man roster and how it's really weird that Astralis is bringing all these players in. Maybe Gla1ve is just the tip of the iceberg. Maybe there's another player on this roster that feels the same way, and that's who Estetag is going to replace once his contract's up. And maybe they're just waiting for that to come together so that they can take a break, because it's a lot. And I'm wondering now if we'll see other teams sort of look at that and go, okay, maybe it's worth it to let our players actually get some semblance of a regular life or get a break so that they can come back refreshed. Because, yeah, they get the player break, but that's only a few weeks, and I don't feel like it's really ample time to recover from everything that they've had to deal with over the last year.
I think it makes a lot of sense. I know a lot of people were wondering, well, what on earth is this? How are you going to do it? Are you going to be replacing people in? But I think that the build out of teams and the build out of staff are sort of naturally functioning hand in hand as well. I mean, here it's obviously more direct, right? Gla1ve needs a break. So you've got Magisk training on the IGL. He's taking over that role. You're bringing in Yugi. It offers a huge opportunity to a player like Yugi. I'm going to make some assumptions here. I could very well be wrong about it, but I'm going to guess that Yugi is not getting paid as much as the starting 5, the top 5 players in Astralis. But for a player like Yugi, this represents a huge opportunity to play for the premier team of his home nation, the best team in the world. I really don't think it's debatable. It has been debatable for periods, but consistently over the last year, over the last 2 years, I don't think it's really a question.
Over the last 4?
Over the last 4 years?
Yeah, like when you start looking at their run, like no team has been this good for that long.
You don't see sustained dominance like this at any other period in Counter-Strike. It's incredible.
Now,
I mean, you see better qualities of short runs, but you've never seen this kind of sustained dominance.
Now, here's an interesting question. You mentioned the pay scale. Astralis is a player-owned team. So how does that work when you start bringing in more players? Are they just offered a salary? Are they given pieces of the team? Are you diluting ownership?
Based on what I've seen, which again, this is not a firm expertise for me. I think the scale of player ownership is quite minor. It's a small share of the stock, still very valuable, obviously. I suspect with the players who are being brought in at this point, I don't know. Great speculation here. I suspect they're not being given ownership share. Or if it is, it's like a vested period where it's like, okay, if you're on the team for a year and a half or 2 years, you'll get some stock. But I don't think if they're signing people to short-term contracts or to backup roles, I would be surprised if they're giving them shares of the company. That would feel bold, to say the least. I think the biggest asset that a player like Yugi is getting out of this deal is a chance to revive his career, because he was a hot star for a long time, and then that star faded in a big way. Some of the rosters he was in, there was difficulty in that optic team. It really tanked his value. Now he's in an ideal situation. And the fact of the matter is, as a player, if everybody around you is better, it is way easier to show what you've got and be a better player and show off and flaunt it a little bit and show you can have success with the right system. And there is no better system than Astralis.
Yeah, I'm just curious on how things are all going to work out with Yugi being an opper more than anything, having him come into the roster where he's replacing not an opper and replacing someone who previously was the in-game leader. Like that's a huge change. Like their IGL and largely the brain of the team has now been replaced by a fresh player who's going to be fulfilling a different role. So they're handing that role off to Magisk. Device, I don't know how they're going to juggle the op role there. I mean, it's all really interesting, but I think the whole thing that we're trying to get across is, gaming is fun. We all love it. And given that currently we live in a society where it's heavily encouraged to spend time indoors playing games, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do those things, finding a balance now is harder than ever because it's hard to do other things because you're not necessarily able to go out and do the things you maybe would have done before easily. Some places it's possible, other places it's impossible. So striking that balance of playing games and having fun versus pouring yourself into a game and never seeing the light of day and becoming a basement dweller, that is now getting
like
blurry.
Shot at me, Mark.
Yeah, right. Well, you do live in the basement, so
it's my goblin cave. Fortunately, it's a half basement. I do have natural light sometimes.
Yeah, you have a window behind you. I can see it.
Yeah, the sun comes in occasionally.
But that's going to be it for us today on the show, guys. If you guys disagree or agree, you can find this on YouTube after the fact. After the show airs, it'll be live on YouTube, so you guys can go back and watch it. You can also watch it here on Twitch. Make sure you follow us on social media. It's Nerd Street Gamers on everything, NERDST Gamers, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of those appropriate social media. You can also go to our website, nerdstgamers.com, and get caught up on all of our tournament information, all the tournaments we're running. We've got plenty in the pipeline and more coming as well as we move into the summer and the quarantine continues. You can also follow us on social media as DarfMike plugs himself in the chat. Twitter.com/DarfMike or Twitter.com/Bach_TV. Mike, you got anything to say before we close things out?
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
All right. Well, thank you guys for watching. Hope to see you next time.